morning and welcome to Love It, a podcast about loving stuff. My name is Daniel Throne. You may recognize my voice from Martini Giant, a podcast about movies that you can check out at www.martinigiant.com. This podcast isn't necessarily about movies, but people come on to talk about things they love, ideas they love, concepts they love, lines from books, moments in time, people, history, anything. If you're interested in being on Love It, I'd love to have you. And you can reach me at dthron on Twitter and also check out my YouTube page at dthron as well. So let's see. Today, what do I love? A friend of mine sent me all the issues of a comic book by Alan Moore called Providence. And I'm loving that so far because it's a good, deeply spooky, Lovecraftian, rich, research kind of based thing, much like his book From Hell, which is horrifying, but one of my favorite graphic novels of all time. I'm also loving Slouching Towards Bethlehem by Joan Didion, which I picked up on Cape Cod when I was recently there at the Yellow Umbrella bookstore. If anyone gets a chance to swing through there, it's a lovely little shop. It's a collection of her work for magazines, I think through the 60s. And she's a really great writer. I really love her stuff. I also loved Oppenheimer, which was very long and intense and upsetting. But you can love things that upset you. That's okay. That's my Bob Ross attitude on that stuff. But today I love talking to James Parris. James Parris is a wonderful man, an incredibly kind and caring guy. He's an illustrator, a director, a writer, and an animator. And if you look up his IMDb, you'll be shocked at some of the stuff that he worked on. It's really pretty legendary. But he's at heart a storyteller on all these levels. And today he came to talk to me about what he really loves, which is communication and great communicators. Because you can be a great communicator in science, like Carl Sagan, who we bring up during the show. Or you can be a great communicator in politics, which also comes up. And you can be a great communicator like James, doing your art and telling stories. I encourage everybody to look up his work and to visit Paper Tiger Films to see the things that he is cooking up. And I hope you enjoy this conversation today, and I'm very thankful to have been able to talk to him. This is my conversation with James Parris, and I hope you love it.
I just gave a talk to some students about like my philosophy on the best way to move forward with your career after you're out of school. And one of the things I tell them is like, don't put a ton of energy into talking about what you hate about art. Find the things you love about art and amplify that, because that's going to make you want to create. But if you spend all your time being the critic, you're going to amplify your inner critic. Yeah, your inner critic is going to be stronger than your inner creator. You know,
right? And that deadens your love of whatever the thing is.
Yes, an artist is supposed to be a lover. I love being around people who are super curious and want to know more about how things work. You know, when I was a kid, like my parents would get me these big books called "Tell Me Why," with the big word "why." Because like that was all I would ever say. Why does the thing do that? Why does the sky do that? Why is the sky blue? And all that. Why do zebras have stripes? And they were like, you know what? Just get this kid some books that answer all these stupid questions.
We have work to do.
Put him in a room with books and crayons, and he'll take it from there. And they were kind of right, to be fair. Books and crayons, and I'm good. But later on, we're old enough to remember like the original Cosmos, Carl Sagan's show.
Oh yeah, that blew my tiny mind.
When he cuts the apple and he's like, "What if a three-dimensional creature passed through a two-dimensional universe?"
Yes, that's right.
And an apple going through a piece of paper, what it would look like to the two-dimensional entities.
The Edwin Abbott Flatland stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and he was just doing that with the apple and an ink pad, right? But I realized I love being in the orbit of people who are eternally curious and who can then bring that love of the things that they find to you to stoke your curiosity. So like Richard Feynman as well, both of them, I guess you could say Sagan and Feynman, is that they're not using their extremely formidable intellect and knowledge of things to separate themselves from you. They are bringing you in
Right.
Hey, I am a common man just like you. I just happen to
Right.
be curious and learning some stuff, and you can too.
Right.
It's not that my brain is on this other level and you can't comprehend. We can all comprehend it. Come on in. Let's all learn. And you know me, I'm a rabid socialist, so I'm all about
Mhm.
like give it to the people.
Yeah.
Like Prometheus, I want everybody to have fire. Prometheus is the working man's hero, right?
Yeah. It's realizing that you are connected with everybody. You're all on the
Yes.
same
Well, you know,
team.
to quote one of the new OGs, Neil deGrasse Tyson, you know,
Sure. Yeah.
like we are all connected to each other
Mhm.
biologically, to the earth chemically, and to the universe atomically. I should give a shout out to some of the newer OGs like Neil deGrasse Tyson,
Sure.
Bill Nye, who played
Yep.
their role in making these big concepts so much easier to grasp. But
Right.
for those of us who are mortal, you know what I mean? And by the way, there are great people doing it on the internet now. Animalogic, I don't know if you've ever seen that YouTube channel.
No.
Danielle Defoe, she's great. She just has such a love for critters, and you can tell she has a genuine curiosity for how critters behave and things you didn't know about different species. She's
Right.
also an artist, so each episode you see a time lapse of her drawing the species she's going to talk about. Casual Geographic is another one. If you ever
Casual Geographic. That's an amazing name. I
the
didn't
guy,
know
it's a
this.
it's a brother, black dude. He's always
Mhm.
like these crazy facts you didn't know about why this animal is going to kill you, and
Right.
he's got an immense following, and he's doing that kind of Richard Feynman kind of thing where normally this is only for biology nerds, but he's
Mhm.
bringing it to the masses like Prometheus in a very funny, almost not sketch comedy, but commentary comedy
Yeah,
kind
you
of
just
way.
yeah, right. To connect it with people like that.
But you
Yeah.
leave with a
Right.
lot of facts in your head.
Right. What I've always been amazed by with your work and just with talking to you personally
Uh-huh.
is like you have this unique ability to not just connect with folks just because you're a cool, nice guy, but like you see the connections between what they love and what you love, and you bring these things together
Mm,
through dialogue. You talk a lot in your work about the Black experience. It's been very moving to me how you've been able to pull everyone together into the same sphere.
mm.
Like just because like this is not my experience doesn't mean I can't immediately start seeing connections between and
Because
it
just because this character is black going through this particular thing doesn't mean
right.
there's not a universal
Yeah,
quality to
there's
that.
a core, right?
Yes,
Like the
yes,
details are can be radically different, obviously.
absolutely, yeah.
But there is a core thing that your stories draw people towards no matter where they're from or what their
Well,
background
I think the greats always did that. You know, I mean, like, gosh, wait, Ugly Duckling was Hans Christian Andersen, correct?
is.
I think.
Yes, I want to say so. Yes, let's go with
Yeah, I think
yes.
so. Let's go with
Sure.
yes, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, if you've ever like read the actual end of that's the way, like I still like, oh, my heart crumples just
Mhm.
listening to that the way he recounts the that. Well, he still calls it the duckling by
Mhm.
the end, you know, who's swimming around, and all of a sudden these other birds came around, and he looked at these birds, and they were so beautiful to him, to his
Mhm.
eyes,
Mhm.
and he cringed in horror because he thought they were going to attack him. He thought he was going to get hit and pecked because
Right.
that was his conditioning. He had this PTSD that's
Right.
what happened to him because I'm so ugly and detestable. And he says, please, basically, the bird is pleading with the new coming birds, please don't attack me. I know I'm ugly. And then they're saying to each other, oh my God, look at him. Isn't he cute? Isn't he beautiful?
Isn't he
And he's like,
beautiful? Yeah,
what? What
exactly.
are you talking about? Oh, wait.
Right.
Oh, you're not going
Right.
to beat me? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
He lived his whole life as a second class citizen, as
Mhm.
somebody who did not, by virtue of his DNA, of his birth, of his appearance, belong. And
Right.
he taught himself he was less than, right? So
Right.
his first, like that dog who you know has been abused, they retreat every time you reach
Mhm.
out your hand.
Mhm.
And then he looks into the water and sees the reflection is identical. They look
Yeah.
like me. Wait, I
Right.
just said they were beautiful, but I
Right.
think I'm ugly. But I
Right.
look at the reflection and we're the same. So why am I ugly again?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And
Beautifully
then they
put.
come and they stroked him and they said, oh, look, one of us. He's one of us. And they circled around him and all these swans. And then he, for the first time, he hears the word swan. And he says, I've never known such joy to be a swan who was born among ducks. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like
yeah.
this is his first taste of self-esteem. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? And I'm like, if that ain't the black experience in America, I don't know what is.
Like your ability to literally draw that out for like your illustration and your like your designs and all this stuff, and to
Mhm.
draw that out for people. Like it doesn't surprise me that when you bring up like Sagan,
Yeah.
is not so far from like it sounds like these are different subjects, right, on the
Right. Right.
surface, but they are. They're communication. They're
Right.
communication of what is important and spiritual and real. You
Yeah,
know.
and making letting us know that we're all connected is
Yeah.
another way of breaking down. It's one thing to take up arms against the the forces of somebody that would seek to subjugate you. Of course, I mean,
Sure, of course.
I
Yeah.
got a lot of Malcolm X in me too. Of
Yeah,
course, don't get
absolutely.
it twisted.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
so I think Malcolm X had a wonderful, by the way, he had a Oxford University.
Mhm,
They had him over there, and I guess this is maybe 1964, 65, and he ends his whole thing at Oxford with this passage from Hamlet, and he's
mhm,
talking about, I believe, and he did it in his very Malcolm X-y kind of way,
mhm.
I believe he was asking a question about whether it was better to, take up arms against the sea of troubles, whatever,
Right. Yeah,
or suffer the slings and arrows, and like,
yeah.
and then he goes into his version of it's like, man, I ain't down with that suffering slings and arrows, but when you talking about taking up arms, now I'm down with that.
I'm with you. Exactly. Yeah,
But he does a wonderful call to arms of people of all colors from that, and he says,
right.
but I think young people, we live in a world where people with power have abused it. This is 64 now,
Sure.
right?
Right.
And he says, and I think it's on young people to do that taking up of the arms. All of us, brown, yellow, black, white, blah, 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 blah. And he did a wonderful Hamletization of our world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, because like I think that, I mean, we've talked about it before, but it's like when you're, taking up arms in quotes, like, just like,
Hmm. Hmm.
when you are resisting and pushing back against what is trying to control you,
Hmm.
like you're not trying to um destroy the other person. You're trying to
Right.
destroy the thing that is poisoning.
The
Uh,
negative
yeah,
mirror you have in your own mind of
yeah,
yourself.
yeah, exactly. Like there's
Yeah.
something happening that is inhuman between you,
Yes,
right?
that you were usually taught. I mean, obviously,
Right,
my slave ancestors, if you're born and the reality of the world you're taught is that you are a slave, this is your place in society.
right. You are
That
lesser
is
automatically.
that
Yeah,
is just
right,
objectively true.
right, right.
Well, you have to really do some work in your when you finally become old enough to question that conditioning, that indoctrination. Because let's be honest, when you're 8 years old, you can't question your
Right,
indoctrination.
exactly.
You
This is the
know,
way. This is the way that the world is working
yeah,
around
I
you, and this is what
struggled
I
with
do.
a lot of
Right,
things I was indoctrinated with
sure,
in my early adult in going into my adulthood, having to
right,
replay a lot of tapes and say, "Oh, wait a minute, maybe I was just too young to challenge that idea when I heard it first.
right,
Maybe that's not the gospel truth." You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
And anybody who's ever dealt with this, that takes a little bit of that takes some Neo waking up from being shot by Agent Smith and realizing I'm not dead kind of
Right,
energy.
right. I
You know what
hear
I
you.
mean?
Sure,
And how many
absolutely.
people just have it automatically within them to be like, oh yeah, I just completely, I don't believe the Matrix is real. How many people
Right.
just have it in them? Usually you need some help.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you need Trinity out there whispering, "Hey, the Oracle told me."
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Well, it's like, man, I bet I'm certain you and I've talked about this scene before. My favorite scene in The Matrix is the cookie scene,
the with the Oracle in the kitchen. Yes,
where
yes.
the question is built up as saying like, am I the one? And he is the one who says he is not.
She just looks at his hand
Yes,
and he
yes.
says, "I'm not the one." And see, just by saying that,
By
he set
saying
himself
exactly, exactly.
right.
It is a that is it. Like he's taking it as she is confirming something that is objectively true, when what's
Yep.
really happening is he is deciding something to be true.
And then my guess is she at that moment, because she's an algorithm
Hmm.
basically, she saw all the possible future points from him
Hmm.
just making that decision, and she's like, okay, I'm going to run with this one where he has to prove his heroism even though he believes he's not the one. Let's use
Right.
that.
For her, it's not over. It's just
Right.
like now it's a new form of
he
challenge.
he made a choice that he didn't realize he had a choice. He could have
Right.
said, "I'm the one," and she could have run with that.
Yeah.
That timeline. But in the multiverse of the Matrix, she's just like, "Okay, I'm going to run with that." And so here's how I can steer Neo into the path of the one, even though he denies it.
So how do you frame that when you are writing and putting together a story? How is that question framed for people? Like, I mean, like they do it really well in that one scene, but I
Hmm.
get the sense from your stuff
Hmm.
that you're trying to have people make their own realization, but you're setting them in a position to make a realization, but the
Mm,
realization is theirs.
yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of my experience has always been realizations are the result of you doing some kind of painful challenging of an orthodoxy you were taught when you were very young. Well,
Yeah.
you notice, like Ugly Duckling, I dealt with lots of different orthodoxies that I grew up with as a child that I
Right.
later had to question
Hmm.
as an adult. And in many cases, it's like frowned upon to even question the
Right.
orthodoxy
Well, I
that
mean, to relate that to the history of science and Sagan, et
Mhm.
cetera, like that's what science constantly rides up against.
Oh,
Is like
gosh,
there's
Bruno,
yeah,
Galileo, right?
Galileo, et cetera. I mean, like these guys, some of these people were straight up killed
Yeah, Bruno was
because
burned at the stake,
yeah,
if I'm
burned
not
at the
people.
stake.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so
yeah.
like it was something that things that we absolutely take for granted now
Yes, yes.
as universal truths that we don't even think
I
about.
mean, I don't know if you've seen 12 Years a Slave, but that one scene, that long uncut shot of just him being almost lynched,
Yeah, yeah.
where
Oh
where,
God.
where he's just got to
Yeah,
stay on his
yeah,
tiptoes for
yeah,
like, I don't know, it's like 5 minutes
yeah.
straight, right?
Right.
And you know what's the saddest part of that shot? That uninterrupted shot is all the slaves that cannot do anything about it. They got to
Hmm.
go about, they're passing in front and passing behind, almost oblivious. They're not
Hmm.
oblivious. They know, but they
Yeah.
can't show an ounce of I'm going to go
They
help him
can't
out
recognize it at all, otherwise they're gonna
because
get
you're
yeah,
toast. You are
yeah. That's
toast if
that.
you
That's that.
that's the power of an oppressive system. You
Yeah.
see your brother suffering right there and you cannot lift a finger to help him because you are so afraid of the repercussions of
Right.
you lifting a finger,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, because like
Except
that's the system depends on the oppressed to reinforce the
absolutely.
system. Like that's the sad trigger of all that
Now,
stuff.
if you're on an island, maybe
Mhm.
there's a different demographic. If you're on Haiti or
Mhm.
Jamaica,
Right.
you realize, wait a second, we outnumber you 99-1.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do
Right.
something. You know what I
Right.
mean? But in my storytelling, my heart is always very close to that moment of, am I do I think I might be brave enough to question the orthodoxy? Because I
Right.
realize that there's like right beyond that door of me questioning could be the real me. We say it like now and it's very enlightened. Be like, oh, of course you want to open the door to the real. Of course, who wouldn't, right?
Right.
If there's
It's
still there's
it's scary.
it
It's a
is
scary
scary.
process, man. It's a
Hell
scary
yeah.
process.
I remember being scared of a lot of ideas that now I say with complete reckless abandon. You know,
Yeah.
hey, look, I'm an atheist, socialist, crazy rebel. You know what I mean? Burn the system down guy. I say this now like as casually as I say
Right.
mocha frappuccino. But there was a time, man, I would have just my sphincter would tighten up just thinking those thoughts.
Sure.
You know what I
Sure.
mean? But so it doesn't happen overnight. But I love watching the process of you're taking that first step, you know, and obviously the great metaphorical stories, the duckling finally making the connection between the reflection that says I am the same as these birds, and
Mhm.
then my belief about the world that says these birds are beautiful and yet I am ugly.
Right.
You know, I could see there's another James Baldwin bird that just swims up next to him and say, "This
Yes.
is a message, brother."
Yes, exactly.
You know what
Exactly
I mean?
so. Exactly so.
You have been taught that you're ugly. There is
Yeah.
no such thing as ugly in this beautiful planet. Speaking
And
of moments in movies that I love as well, I mean that
mhm.
to your point about these moments of you're opening the door to who you really are. A
Yeah.
lot of times you need another character to be part of that decision
Right.
making. You know what I
Yes.
mean? You
Yeah.
normally don't do it just in a room by yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I love moments in film where two people who might have been indoctrinated. I mean, sometimes it's very obviously and blatant, like I don't know, enemy mine or something like that, where
Yeah.
you're this and I'm the opposite and we're supposed to be enemies, and yet there's a moment where we are starting to figure out why are we enemies exactly, you know.
Yes, exactly.
I
Exactly.
love when there's a moment where they say, you know what, I respect you, I was taught not to, but damn it, I got to give you props for that. And then the other person says, yeah, I'm going to let my guard down for a second too, let's just shake hands. And you
Exactly.
know this is the beginning of something like, oh wow, they're about to become like, we're breaking this wall
Yes.
down, right?
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
those wall breaking moments, you know.
When the architecture of what seems to be the like that is holding people apart,
Yes,
and
yes,
you realize that this is an illusion,
yes,
that
yes,
we are actually in complete control of
yes.
what our relationships are to people.
Absolutely. I love
Yeah.
that moment. I mean, you know, the socialist in me wants to quote Eugene Debs, and he talks about like, you know, the moment if we have to slit each other's throats to make money, then we're not going to love each other that hard. And I guess if you wanted to say, what is this all like, if I wanted to break it down to its atomic level of what I like, of what makes me feel good and I love about those moments, we all, I think, are born with this circle of what we represent as family. Like
Mhm.
there are rules for anybody in this circle,
Yeah. Right.
like somehow you weren't given a manifesto when you were a child, but you kind of learned it just without learning it, that if somebody has this title, family member, you will die for them, you will do anything to make sure that they're comfortable, If they are hungry, get them food. If they're sleepy, provide them a place to sleep. If they are whatever, tired, just don't mess with them. Respect them at the highest level if they're in this circle called family. And I think what I love is watching people take that circle that was only for the people that share your immediate DNA and then expanding it. Now it includes people, but then this person gets in just because they're cool. Right. Like if we're the wolf pack, Bagheera gets in just because he brings us stuff. And then all of a sudden you expand it again to include members of maybe a club or a tribe or whatever. And then you expand it again. And I love it when they get to the point where that circle expands so big. If your name is Homo sapiens, you're in.
I think that is built into us. We have the initial, like when we were, like millions of years ago, it's like...
You're talking like Australopithecus?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, where it's just like, you see somebody outside of your immediate set, it activates the grab a rock.
2001.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's happening, right?
Give me that bone.
But language and storytelling have developed these ways for us to, as little workarounds. And so you sort of like build, you're like this conflict is really messing us up. We've gotten so successful that we have to start building little mimetic ideas to work around these kinds of things, because
that's why I think storytelling is the most powerful tool we got as a species, because it gives you a copy of yourself to look at going through a thing that you can be like, what if we did it this way? I mean, Gene Roddenberry with Star Trek, right? What if we had a society that wasn't based on the accumulation of wealth? What if that were just about bettering ourselves and making sure everybody on planet Earth was in a good place?
Just imagine what happens. Like these things is a little playground for you to start to figure it out.
Test drive the concept in your head, right? By the way, speaking of it, just imagine, like, have you ever... Well, I think am I the only one who does this? If you're driving or even riding a bike and you look to your right, you will start veering your vehicle that way.
Pulling that way. Yeah, exactly. For sure.
To me, that's the story, right? The story makes you look that direction. And before you know it, we are veering our species in the direction of our story. The more stories we have that are saying our future could be something where money doesn't drive human interaction and we can be more compassionate and more family for the whole human race. What if we tell more stories like that? What if over time we just steer the human race that way by telling stories?
Yeah, because it's like, it's like I'm basically quoting Inception, but it's like when you have like an idea like that can't leave your mind once it's there.
Right. So what if we do an Inception on our species and just put...
exactly. Yes, exactly.
Let's plant a whole lot of stories that we love each other like family.
Yeah.
And aren't we though? Does this not bring us back to Carl Sagan talking about we are all made of star stuff, or Neil deGrasse Tyson, we are all connected to each other biologically, to the earth chemically, to the universe atomically. We are one set of little crawly things on a peach, like we are mold on a plum, spinning around a giant grapefruit. Hurtling through the cosmos past a billion other grapefruits. I don't think any bunch of ants crawling around an orange do themselves any favor by fighting any other ants on that orange.
Yes, exactly.
Honestly, again, Sagan put it way better when he the pale blue dot monologue that he, if you remember, like, he talks about every warlord leader,
everything, Genghis Khan, everything that's ever happened,
all lived on this pale blue dot. And think of the rivers of blood that were shed just so that somebody could be a momentary master of a fraction of a dot.
It's so exciting to talk to you, my friend. This is like...
man, are you kidding? We should do this all the time. This is great. Are you kidding?
This could be an entirely separate podcast about you and I just going over art.
And I think more artists need to get together and just reaffirm the love we have for our species in general, and then realize that artists are the thing that is going to take us to the next level, in my opinion. I think it was Stephen Fry who said, incuriosity is one of the most foolish human failings there is. To not be curious about this wonderful world and the wonderful universe outside this world. There's so much. You could live 1,000 lifetimes and not fill your brain with all there is to know. So how could you possibly go about your life just being oblivious to all this and just be like, I'm okay with being oblivious? Shame on you. Go learn some shit, brothers and sisters.
You have brought new love to my scene over and over again. James Parris, thank you very much for being on this, and I hope to have you back.
Thank you. Great being here.